Please remain standing for the national anthem Negaraku and Varsity Kita. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Thank you. A very good afternoon to His Excellency Manuel A. Gonzalez Sanz, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Worship of Costa Rica, Their Excellencies, the Ambassadors, Yang berbahagia Profesor Dato' Insinyur Dr. Riza Atik Abdullah Oki Rahmat, Deputy Vice Chancellor Academic and International Affairs Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia, Yang berbahagia Profesor Dato' Dr. Imran Ho Abdullah, Deputy Vice Chancellor Industry and Community Partnerships Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia, the representatives of the embassies in Malaysia, Associate Professor Dr. Sufian Jusof, Deputy Director of IKMAS, Dr. Abdul Latif Ahmad, Deputy Director, International Relations Center, UKM Global, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the UKM Global Talk Series by Institute of Malaysian and International Studies ICMAS in collaboration with UKM Global. I'm Jason Cheong from the Faculty of Law, and on behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to extend a very warm selamat datang to His Excellency to University Kebangsaan Malaysia. Ladies and gentlemen, Global Talk Series is a platform where University Kebangsaan Malaysia invites prominent international officials to share their experience and hopes of their respective country, as well as strengthening their relationship with Malaysia. We have a few sessions in 2015, and this year, we are very delighted that His Excellency Manuel Gonzalez Sanz will enlighten us about Costa Rica's foreign policy issues as a nation-state position in Central America. His Excellency will address the case adjudicated in the International Court of Justice between Nicaragua and Costa Rica over a disputed territory, and how Costa Rica has used the global governance body as a foreign policy tool. His Excellency will also speak about the ways in which this tropical nation of nearly 5 million people is addressing its foreign interests in global governance. Hence, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, to start off, it is now my pleasure to invite Professor Dato' Insinyur Dr. Rizal Atik Abdullah Oki Rahmat, Deputy Vice Chancellor Academic and International Affairs, University Kebangsaan Malaysia, to deliver the welcoming remarks.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. His Excellency Manuel Gonzalez Sanz, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Worship of Costa Rica, Dear Excellencies, dear Ambassadors, yang berbahagia Profesor Dr. Ibrahim, Deputy Vice Chancellor Industry and Community Partnership, the relative of the embassies in Malaysia, Associate Professor Dr. Sufyan Yusuf, Deputy Director of ICMAS, Dr. Latif Ahmad, Deputy Director, International Relations Center UKM Global, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Bienvenido. Welcome and selamat datang. I don't know whether it is correct pronunciation or not. We are very honored to have with us today His Excellency Manuel Gonzalez Sanz, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Worship of Costa Rica. Selamat datang dan terima kasih. It is a fascinating fact that geographically Costa Rica, like a few countries in the northern part of South America, in the Latin American region, is located right across Malaysia with the Pacific Ocean in between and sharing just about the same distance above the equator line. It takes about 20 to 22 hours to fly across Costa Rica to Malaysia. Despite the faraway distance, I am pleased to inform His Excellency that over these past 6 years, UKM academics have paved their way to Costa Rica. And likewise, we have had academics from Universidad Nacional de Costa Rica over to UKM. This was initiated by Dr. Benicio Sandi Meza from UNA, who was then pursuing his PhD study with our Faculty of Social Sciences and Humanities. It was in 2010 that our academics, Associate Professor Dr. Zarina Osman, now the head of ICAR, Center of Latin American Studies, and Associate Professor Dr. Amilun Basir, both from Citra UKM, pioneered the way to UKM in Central America to give lecture talks on Malaysian language and culture and ASEAN Islamic civilization. A few more follow suit, among which was the director of ICMAS herself, Dr. Rashila Ramli, together with our distinguished professor, Dr. Samsul Amri Baharudin. I believe Associate Professor Sufyan himself was made his way to Costa Rica to share his expertise. We have also had the sharing of knowledge on Islamic banking by Dr. Sabri Harun from Citra and ASEAN Business Culture, by Dr. Andrew from ICMAS. Just last year, we had a workshop dialogue on security and governance coordinated by ICMAS and UNESCO. And the most recent academic trip was by Associate Professor Dr. Siva from Faculty of Social Sciences and Humanities, ICMAS Fellow Jay Erdaus, and just returned from his PhD one-month stay fieldwork in Costa Rica, back to Edinburgh University in the UK for his PhD study on Costa Rica foreign affairs. In return, we have had exchange visits by academics from the School of International Relations, UNA, to share with us the regional integration in Central America on the economic and international relations of Asia, Central America. Professor Alexander Lopez from UNA participated in our LASA trip in 2008 as one of the keynote speakers. LASA, or Latin America and ASEAN Studies Seminar, is a biannual event that brings together the meet of scholars from Latin America region and ASEAN. We thus call upon Costa Rica to please join us in LASA 5 this year in October. With all these academic episodes that have taken place in sharing knowledge, it is in no doubt that today's episode with His Excellency Manuel Gonzalez Sanz presents here in UKM to share his lecture on Disarmed Democracy and Outlook on Costa Rican Foreign Policy is very meaningful to UKM academics, students, and those who are here today. I wish to emphasize that Costa Rica is significant with geopolitical location in Central America, and not to mention the literal meaning of Costa Rica in Spanish to mean that rich coast, rich coast. We are certain it is rich in many ways, people, heritage, and policy practices that can be shared to strengthen the existing ties we currently have between Costa Rica and Malaysia, and directly with the Latin American region. I also wish to express my utmost gratitude to continuous invaluable support from respective embassies of the region here in Malaysia. UKM hopes to consolidate further and strengthen the South-South cooperation within the countries of Global South through the strengthening of institutional link to promote the development of research, innovation between Latin America and ASEAN region. Thus, I wish to thank primarily the Embassy of Costa Rica in Singapore and our Malaysian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Wisma Putra, the American Division, for this opportunity. With that, once again, welcome to Global Talk Series by Embassy of Costa Rica. I hope that all our members will be able to benefit from this event and have a good, fruitful day. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Dato' Insinyur Dr. Rizal Atik Abdullah Okey Rahman, Deputy Vice Chancellor Academic and International Affairs, University Kebangsaan Malaysia, for such a wonderful speech. Ladies and gentlemen, honorable guests, members of the floor, without further delay, please allow me to introduce to you our guest keynote speaker. His Excellency Manuel Gonzalez Sanz obtained his degree from University of Costa Rica Law School, San Jose, Costa Rica, and Columbia University Law School, New York. He had taught the corporate law and securities at the University of Costa Rica, and as an invited professor to the International Commercial Law Graduate Program of the law school on several occasions. He was appointed as the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Worship of Costa Rica in May 2014. He leads a new form of promotion of foreign relationships of Costa Rica as they move forward from a traditional approach to a strategic foreign policy action with a pragmatic perspective. He also strengthens the network of Costa Rican diplomatic offices abroad as agencies of commercial promotion and foreign investment attraction. Last year, he exercised the pro tempore presidency of the Community of Latin America and Caribbean States, which concluded with a summit held on January 2015 in San Jose, Costa Rica. He had also co-presided the Forum for East Asia Latin America Cooperation and hosted in Costa Rica the 7th meeting of Ministers of Foreign Affairs. Hence, it is now my pleasure to invite His Excellency Manuel Gonzalez Sanz to deliver the keynote address entitled Disarmed Democracy and Outlook on Costa Rican Foreign Policy. Let's put our hands together to welcome His Excellency.
Good afternoon, dear professors, members of the distinguished table, members of the diplomatic community, students and faculty, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is a great honor to have the opportunity to share with you the experience of Costa Rica in the defending of its sovereignty through the exclusive use of diplomacy and international law, and an armed democracy that dissolved its army in 1949. The purpose of this conference is to examine some of the important details regarding the use of the mechanisms of international law, which are part of the proceedings before the International Court of Justice, considered as a part of the system for the peaceful settlement of disputes. However, I will also briefly introduce some important foreign policy initiatives that Costa Rica has been promoting. As a nation, Costa Ricans have adopted democratic government as a way of life. This means not only to choose our authorities and representatives through the free exercise of suffrage, but also the strengthening of public institutions and the rule of law. And in doing this, not only to adopt legislation which main focus is human rights, but to incorporate best practices of state management in the daily life of government to ensure population the enjoyment of those rights. Once the army was dissolved and prohibited as a permanent institution in our 1949 Constitution, the state invested a great deal of effort to strengthen our institutions that will convey those newly freed resources to education, health, and social welfare, ensuring internal stability and the country's development. We have also developed a foreign policy based on the following fundamental pillars. 1. The defense of democracy, territorial integrity, and national sovereignty. 2. The promotion, protection, and respect of human rights and fundamental freedoms. 3. The promotion of peace, disarmament, and national, regional, and global security. 4. The strengthening of international law and the development of effective multilateralism. 5. The promotion of sustainable development in its three approaches: social, economic, and environmental. Today I would like to focus on the importance of two of these pillars, which are defense of democracy, territorial integrity, and national sovereignty, as well as the promotion of peace, disarmament, and national, regional, and global security, as it has become increasingly important in our current affairs. Costa Rica has been a leader in virtually all efforts aimed at achieving international disarmament, and our voice carries the authority of a country that has managed to develop without the use of force. We have actively worked to leave behind the Roman saying, "If you want peace, prepare for war." This should be a global priority. If we want peace, we have to work for peace. I hope this message reaches all international decision makers. As I will explain, to be a disarmed democracy is not easy, because it requires investment in diplomacy and international law. But even though it may not be easy, it is the true belief of my country that this is the only path to a true world in peace. Costa Rica has been successful in that regard, and while the conditions of each country and region may differ, ours is clear testimony that a country does not need an extensive military apparatus to protect itself, and to the extent that conditions permit, we hope that our experience can encourage other states to entrust their security to these mechanisms. Our small country, located in the southern part of Central America, but it is the only with Nicaragua that Costa Rica has had repeated territorial conflicts since our independence in 1821. It is noteworthy that in many of them we have been able to reach agreements through the use of diplomacy. For example, the 1858 Boundary Treaty, which regulates the border regime between the two republics. In those cases where it has been impossible to reach agreements through negotiation, we have been forced to resort to international arbitrations and courts of law. Today, I will refer to the last chapter of these differences, which ended in a successful judgment in favor of Costa Rica that the International Court of Justice issued on December 2015. Over the past 11 years, Costa Rica has had the need to go on 4 occasions to the International Court of Justice to resolve disputes provoked by Nicaragua. Although Costa Rica has not had any desire to make use of judicial means of international law, we have always done this as a last resort, making all efforts to find solutions through diplomatic channels and negotiation. Costa Rica has maintained an eminently civil tradition, which has relied on international law to find solutions to its neighboring conflicts. The signing of the Treaty of Limits of 1858 and the subsequent history of its relations with Nicaragua are an example. Since the signing of that treaty, Costa Rica has resolved its disputes with that country without bloodshed, through arbitration and judicial mechanisms, but mainly through bilateral negotiation. By contrast, Nicaragua has taken part in military direct and indirect actions against Costa Rica on at least 3 occasions, without there being any prior dispute to explain, let alone justify such actions. Certain of those actions against our country were resolved with the signing of several international treaties in accordance with the Continental Treaty for the Peaceful Resolution of Disputes. The last time Costa Rica was forced to make use of an international instrument for settlement of controversies occurred on October 2010, a dispute that was recently settled through litigation, as I explained, before the International Court of Justice last December. The controversy to which I refer was provoked by the Army of Nicaragua's invasion of a small Costa Rican territory that took place on October 2010. From our point of view, which was supported by the International Court of Justice judgment, these actions were a breach by that country to the current border regime, specifically to the aforementioned Treaty of Limits of 1858 and the arbitral awards of the President of the United States, Grover Cleveland. Costa Rica always felt that the focus on the dispute was the violation of its territorial integrity and sovereignty, even if Nicaragua would later try to transform it into a territorial dispute by claiming sovereignty over the territory it occupied only after Costa Rica presented its case to the International Court. The before that, by felling of the forest, by dumping of dredged sediment, the excavation of artificial channels, and the incursion of Nicaraguan troops in Costa Rican territory, were clearly unlawful acts to which any country with an active army would have responded militarily. By formalizing its claim in the Organization of American States, Costa Rica decided to use the peaceful resolution of disputes established in what is known as the Pact of Bogota. This is very important because by doing this, we decided not to exercise our right of self-defense in our own territory by the use of force, and choose to defend ourselves entirely through the peaceful means of the dispute settlement procedures. The initial efforts at the Organization of American States failed because Nicaragua refused to clear the area that it had invaded. That made obvious it did not have any interest in finding a diplomatic solution to the conflict. Nicaragua flatly rejected the competence of the Organization of American States to hear the case, and by rejecting its obligations under the Organization of American States Charter. Being there no other alternative, Costa Rica filed a lawsuit before the International Court of Justice in 2010, together with our request for the indication of provisional measures. As will be seen, the application for provisional measures was essential to prevent that the illegal actions that Nicaragua was undertaking had irreparable consequences on Costa Rican territory. It is also very important because it is one of the few mechanisms in the international judicial system that allows for a very quick response to a conflict that could intensify with time. Since there was no adequate means to reach the border area, Costa Rica started the construction of a road along the bordering river, San Juan, which began in late 2010 and was intended to give access to the police and other emergency services close to the disputed area. The project was expanded to be used by all residents along the Costa Rican bank of the river. This was not only because Nicaragua was not respecting the navigation rights of the local people on the river, but also to provide necessary and expeditious transportation in case the dispute worsened. Nicaragua decided then to file a lawsuit against Costa Rica before the International Court of Justice in December 2011, alleging environmental damage to the San Juan River due to the construction of the road. It was obvious that they had no interest in getting a prompt judgment in the case where Costa Rica was the applicant. So this was only a procedural tactic to delay the decision of the main case. However, to be effective, there is no better strategy than telling the truth. Costa Rica presented their cases in a simple and objective way, particularly in the value and depth of the technical evidence, both his own and that of the other party. No doubt, the court, in these cases, did not issue a decision giving both parties an equal share. Its resolution settled the two substantive issues in favor of Costa Rica, namely the sovereignty and the issue of the alleged environmental damages. Regarding sovereignty, the court was conclusive. However, its decision not to analyze if Nicaragua breached both the United Nations Charter and the Charter of the Organization of American States on the threat and use of force is a regrettable loss of a valuable opportunity, not only for the case between Costa Rica and Nicaragua, but in relation with actual global situations where the threat or the use of force continues to be an unfortunate reality, and where the respect of sovereignty and territorial integrity of the states is at risk. What the court did was to reassert its authority as the highest international court willing to enforce its own decisions. This is demonstrated by the ratification of the breaches by Nicaragua of the court's order on provisional measures, as well as in relation to the payment of compensation for damages granted to Costa Rica. This is essential because in this way, a Costa Rican primary objective was achieved, preventing that the controversy became an endless dispute by precluding the possibility of a continuous challenging of the current boundary regime. Moreover, in the case of the construction of the road, Costa Rica was also triumphant when it was made clear by the court we did not cause any damage to the San Juan River. It reaffirmed not only an obligation in which Costa Rica believes, but also established fundamental criteria regarding the construction of mega projects that could potentially harm neighboring countries. Trials before the International Court of Justice are a valid tool available to countries to find answers to their disputes with other states. The experience of Costa Rica can be useful in any region, as in the present day, in similar boundary controversies between neighboring countries. However, for its cost and duration, they should be used, as Costa Rica has done, after exhausting all avenues of bilateral negotiation available to states. Mechanisms available under international law, including the procedures before tribunals, are always a better solution and entail lesser costs for a country than those involved in military conflicts, not to mention the loss of human life. This is particularly important for a country like ours, which continues to advocate for the reduction of military spending and global disarmament. The cases recently concluded meant one of the most dynamic exercises in international litigation practice. Since its beginning, every step of the procedures was circumscribed to the mechanisms for the peaceful resolution of disputes set out in the international instruments. A page of bilateral history between the two countries has been settled, and we hope this will have a positive effect on the improvement of relations between two neighboring countries joined by history, by geography, and more important, by its own people. I will also like to take this opportunity to briefly share with you some of the current priorities and initiatives presented by Costa Rica in the international arena. Within this context, my country has made efforts to promote Costa Rica as a democratic and disarmed nation, believing in the multilateral system and international law as its only way of defense. For Costa Ricans, the main tool to promote and guarantee security are strengthening democracy and promoting and respecting the rule of law. Even though we are a demilitarized country, Costa Rica still understands legitimate concerns about security and defense that other countries may have, and their need to incur military spending, as justified by the amount and reasonability of the expenses. What Costa Rica questions is excessive military spending, which becomes a barrier to development and a driver of conflict. Therefore, we insist on the need to make progress from antiquated security doctrines based on strictly military paradigms to those that are essentially based on paradigms of human development. Another issue that Costa Rica has been at the forefront in current times is in regards to the upcoming election of a Secretary General of the United Nations organization. Costa Rica included in the resolution that was approved last September an invitation to member states to present women candidates for the position of Secretary General. The time has become for the post of Secretary General to be occupied by a woman. Let us recognize the great capacity, competence, and commitment of women in all areas. Let us send an unequivocal political signal that as we commemorate the 21st anniversary of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, that organization stands by what it preaches in terms of equality and empowerment of women. In our recent history, we have managed to protect very important national interests, as I have tried to explain. We have not only acted and responded based on the international law that assists us, but as well, Costa Rica, following its peaceful tradition, achieved the approval of Arms Treaty, Trade Treaty. It is a commitment of the Costa Rican current president to work towards a more active regional and multilateral foreign policy. We believe that this achievement has become a state policy, a policy that rises general consensus. To conclude, I would like to remark that history teaches us usually small countries enjoy greater acceptance and have an important number of allies in diplomatic arena if they work successfully together and strengthen foreign policy that contribute to the defense of sovereignty and security. It only remains to thank the university for the generous invitation that I was given to share with you this page of Costa Rican history. And I look forward to having and receiving and answering your questions. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much, His Excellency Manuel A. Gonzalez Sanz, for the mind-opening talk. As students of University Kebangsaan Malaysia, we find this sharing to be very interesting as it broadens our perspectives about Costa Rican's foreign policy. Ladies and gentlemen, we now open the floor for question and answers session. I would like to request those who have questions to please raise your hand, introduce yourself, and you can proceed to ask your question. Please be reminded to keep your questions short and simple. Thank you. So for those who have questions, can please raise your hand and ask your questions.
Minister, good afternoon, and thank you very much for sharing your views with us this afternoon. I am Victor Echeverri, Ambassador of Colombia. As you know, we have been following during many years the situation between Nicaragua and Costa Rica. We are also having, maybe it's the phone. Okay, we have been following the situation. We have also some issues at the International Court of Justice. In fact, we are expecting a new decision on the 17th of March. And I would like to first congratulate Costa Rica for this last, I have to give, sorry. Thank you, Ambassador. Can you hear me like this? Yes. Great. So we have been following this situation, and I myself I have been witness of the suffering of some people in the Costa Rica side, the river San Juan. And first of all, I would like to congratulate the foreign policy of Costa Rica is very interesting how you handle the situation. The demilitarized country, the neighbor that is quite different in many ways to Costa Rica, but at the same time you have the generosity to keep millions of Nicaraguan citizens working in Costa Rica. So that is beautiful, and that is the first thing that I would like to mention. The second is that, do you expect that with the plans to probably to open or to work in a potential channel to be built in Nicaragua, connect the Atlantic to the Pacific, to lead to more cases in front of the International Court of Justice in the future? Thank you very much.
I just try to briefly answer. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for your kind remarks. It is correct, as of today, about 12% of our population come from Nicaragua. We have been net recipients of migration from Nicaragua during the last 40 years. And a lot of them have been integrated into our labor force and into our economy. But we are not capable of receiving hundreds of thousands, as it has been the case in the course of the last decades. This is putting a lot of pressure on our social network, but we have to deal with it. And, we have always said that the people of Nicaragua should not be the ones to pay for the errors that we as government commit. They are entitled to better life, better standards. They find good jobs in Costa Rica, better salaries. As of today, the remittances from Costa Rica to Nicaragua are close to $400 million a year, and that's a lot of money for our economy. And that helps a lot of families in Nicaragua as well. But we need to have a better understanding, a better migration policies between the two countries in tackle this situation. To be completely honest with you, Ambassador, I don't think this channel project is for real. I don't think that's going to be built. Financially speaking, it doesn't make any sense. From the point of engineering, it makes sense. If it is done in a proper way, we'll be glad to have one big channel in the north and the Panama Channel in the south. But if it is done well, because you pointed out something very important, the potential for new conflicts is there. Why? Because this project is going to use the Lago de Nicaragua. The San Juan River, which is a Nicaraguan river, not making any claim about it, we only have navigation rights, moors in the Lago of Nicaragua. Until then, no problem. Nevertheless, for the neighboring communities, the river, the San Juan River, is very important. And in addition to that, there is another river that starts or is born in the San Juan River, which is a Costa Rican river. It's called Rio Colorado. So there is sort of a cascade effect. If the lake is affected and it affects the San Juan River, it will eventually affect the Colorado River. So that's why we have been insisting for already many years on having the environmental studies that will support the building of the canal. And they apparently are very secret, or they just don't exist. So that raises a lot of concerns. And I have pointed out exactly what I'm telling you here to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Nicaragua. So it's a big environmental concern for us.
Thank you for the questions and also for the answer. Does anyone has any more questions? Okay, yes, please.
Your Excellency, welcome to Malaysia, Carlos Rios, from Mexico. Just for perhaps to have a more wider view, we are 10 embassies here of America and Malaysia. Unfortunately, we are working together to promote more the knowledge of our regions here. It's clear that in spite of all of these new media and internet, still there is a lack of knowledge about the reality in Latin America. We are convinced that, of course, in congratulations for this kind of effort, that it's not easy. But it contributes a lot of that kind of approach and that kind of understanding to two regions that we are convinced that are for the near future of the cooperation, international cooperation. ASEAN and the Latin American region. Those are the most important emerging regions that we feel it's important to continue working together. Would you kind of give us what is the vision of Costa Rica about this?
Absolutely, Ambassador. Thank you very much. A very interesting comment. In our particular case, we have been looking to the United States too much and for too long. The United States is our main trading partner, is the main source of tourism into Costa Rica, is the main source of foreign direct investment into my country. But after what happened with the global crisis in 2008, I think that a lot of countries in Latin America, and I'm of course talking about our experience, we learned the hard way that we cannot be so dependent on the United States. On the other hand, the other source of foreign direct investments, tourism, and trade was, and still in a way, the European Union. And the European Union is doing a little bit worse, not to say a lot worse than the United States nowadays. So it makes all the sense for us to look into our own region and to look into Asia. Those are the two regions in the world nowadays that, from our perspective, have more potential, are more active. We, in Latin America, are having a difficult times, in particular those countries that are very much dependent on commodities, and that also sends a very clear message of what we have to do, and is exactly what is happening also to some countries in the Asia Pacific that are too much dependent on oil and gas, and are in the process of diversifying or starting to diversify their economies. And that's where we see opportunities in that diversification process. Costa Rica does not export any natural resources. As you know, we don't have any oil, we don't have gas. What we have is human talent. That's what we try to offer the world. That's why we have invested so many years on education, health, and that's why we are also trying to attract investors from this region. We have, in our particular case, we have an extensive network of free trade agreements, one with Mexico, we have with the US, we have with Canada, we have the Central American Common Market, we have a free trade agreement with the CARICOM countries, we have with Peru, Colombia, Chile, we have one with Singapore, China, just to, I think I'm not forgetting, European Union, we have an association agreement. So nowadays about 90% of our trade is regulated by free trade agreements that are not so frequent, but are trade agreements, I will leave it there. And so we think that there is a lot of activity going on in this part of the world. The Pacific Alliance, you are founding members of the Pacific Alliance, is something that I have found, is something that I have been asked repeatedly in this short trip that I have made through Asia. There is a lot of expectation about what the Pacific Alliance can do in terms not just in our region, but also in its relation to part of the world. We have OCALAI, we have ASEAN, we have the ASEAN Economic Community that was recently launched. You have APEC, you have PEC, you have